of that footage shows the street around the celebration was quiet, and a man in a white t-shirt is noticeable for inciting the children and is fetching new people again and again. The woman who is remembered for her cheering, whose name is Noel Abdel Fattah, later stated she was offered cake if she celebrated on camera. At the time, she was unaware of the 9/11 attacks and said she was frightened when she saw the pictures on television of how she was being portrayed to the world. And then that book goes on to reproduce a Spiegel article, which I haven't checked. I think it's available still online, but if it is, I'll throw it in the show notes. Anyway, it's reproduced in that book that's talking about that ARD investigation in more detail. And the other part of this is there was, at the same time as this was being debated, there was a canard thrown out by some Brazilian researcher who said, no, this is footage that was taken 10 years ago. They were saying it was taken in 91, but that timeline didn't add up. And some people said, no, it was 1990, and other people say, no, it was 1993. That is a blind alley. No, this was not taken in the 1990s. It was from around that time, but it had nothing to do with the celebration of 9/11. And that's again, it's a perfect example of how media manipulation gets people ready for war. And that's another example of how 9/11, war on terror, war in the Middle East all go together in this big package. And 9/11 truth is well, I don't know what's the best metaphor. It's the bow that if we unwrap, the whole present comes out, which is the present of the truth, which unlocks all of the propaganda and crap that's been built around this for so long.
Perhaps those so-called Palestinians were hired by the Extra Mile casting agency.
Yeah.
Who knows? All right, let's take our first video question. This one coming in from Flying Axe Blade.
In moral, ethics, and economics. In contrast, the Oxford-Cambridge scholar and best-selling author C.S. Lewis did not suffer such delusions. Despite the gigantic and deeply disturbing events that he lived through, including the rise of total war, the total state, and genocides that developed during his lifetime. Lewis's aversion to government was clearly revealed in 1951 when Winston Churchill, within weeks after he gained office as Prime Minister of Great Britain, wrote to Lewis offering to have him knighted as commander of the Order of the British Empire. Lewis, however, flatly denied the offer because he, unlike the progressives, was never interested in politics and was deeply skeptical of government power and politicians. He expressed this further in the first two lines of his poem entitled Lines During a General Election. Quote, "Their threats are terrible enough, but we could bear all that. It is their promises that bring despair." Unquote. Lewis had actually held this view for many years. In 1940, he had written a letter to his brother Warren stating, "Could we start a stagnation party, which in general elections would boast that during its term of office, no event of the least importance had taken place," unquote. He further noted, quote, "I was by nature against government," unquote.
Okay, so
Now, this is in direct contrast.
My question for James Corbett, thank you very much for all that you do. I really cannot express how much I rely on you for news to keep me informed. Does that mean that C.S. Lewis, if he were such an anarchist as what he's claiming there, because I would think someone for a stagnation party would quite qualify as an anarchist, should he not be then high on the reading list for anarchists? Because he's not just a Narnia author, and he's not just the author of Mere Christianity. He is the author of many political books. Thank you very much. Cherish his new love. Zoe, say goodbye, James. Okay, well, she waggles. Be well.
Thank you for the question, Flying Axe Blade, and say hi to Zoe for me, or say goodbye to Zoe for me. All right, the question is, C.S. Lewis, should he be on the anarchist reading list? Well, it is an interesting, you have an interesting quote in there, and some interesting anecdotes. I will confess that the only thing I ever read of C.S. Lewis is Surprised by Joy, and I was surprised by how not great it was. Despite the fact it came recommended by some people. Didn't do much for me. But I will at least look into whether there are some works of his that should be read. And if you or anyone else out there knows of any specifically that I should read first, pass them along. I'll add them to the reading list. But of course, this is the very reason for the existence of the Well-Read Anarchist series, isn't it? This is what it's about, trying to find the anarchist reading list, as it were. And I have lots of ideas, don't worry. I'm going to be featuring Kropotkin and Spooner and Goldman and Tucker and Rothbard and all sorts of people I've already got on the list. But if you have an idea and you want to see this anarchist writer's ideas in that series or in some other work I do, then again, pass it along. That's what it's about. Pass along the ideas. And if you're a Corbett Report member, pass along the ideas in the comment section. Everyone can join in. So that's, we'll develop an anarchist reading list, and we'll continue working on the Well-Read Anarchist series. This is the guy that was doing the audio editing for the inaugural edition of the Well-Read Anarchist series, and it's tedious work, isn't it?
It's surprisingly not as enjoyable as the video editing side of it, but, but it's still part of it, and you have to, you just have to suck it up and just get through it.
And we will definitely continue that series. So, all right, thank you again for the question.
All right, let's go back to the mailbag with a question from Adrian. I've been currently listening to podcasts and other miscellaneous news regarding the Brussels attack. It seems every time I hear the word Belgium, my mind can't help but think, hey, isn't Belgium the country that was credited with picking up the slack in